we try to recreate shapes of the people that, when we're initially learning that we're learning from and that we're seeing dance, we're trying to recreate those shapes instead of figuring out how to do it properly in our body. And that creates a lot more problems than it than it creates
Mhm.
solutions.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Hello and welcome to another zany episode of Nerdy West Coast Swing, the podcast with pixels where the anchors are out of this world and the points don't matter. We are here to help train your eyes so you can learn faster and dance better. I'm Cassie Winter.
I'm Alicia Marshall, and today we have another special guest on with us. We have Lizzy Spann. We're very excited to have her. So today I think we're just going to go into some questions and then go over the video from Swincoop.
So we'd love to hear about your dance background, like how you got started, like the too long did it read from beginning to now.
Oh man. So I always like to say that I got started because of a tropical storm. It's partially the truth. Uh, Essentially, during the 2008 like crash of jobs and market and everything, my dad picked up a job in Florida. And I don't remember, I want to say I was like 7, 8, 9, around that age. But me and my mom went to go visit him and just like spend half a year with him in Florida. And for I forget, I think it was every Friday, we went to the beach and we would watch the sunset and it was super nice and super cool. But one evening, the tropical storm hit. And we were like, what do we do for our evenings instead of go to the beach? And so my parents were like, we know, we're gonna go West Coast swing dancing. And so uh, the first couple of times I was a very introverted child. I know you can't tell that about me now, but very introverted and like would sit in the corner and just like watch people kind of do their thing. And it was really cool, but I was like, I don't know many people. I'm not comfortable. But one night, then Shevin K. Kukulani, he came over and he grabbed me up and he was like, you're gonna learn how to West Coast swing. And I was hooked immediately. And so now I've been doing it for 15 years, and have just loved it ever since. So
Wow,
Awesome.
that's a great little story.
I know. Oh, I love the little like I got into West Coast swing because of a tropical storm.
I feel
But
like
Great.
that's a very unusual way.
yeah,
Great intro. I love
exactly.
it.
It's
So the
great.
dance we're going to be analyzing today is your dance with Branden from Vancouver. Is there any preface you want to give to that dance, like background, what was going through your head either before, during, or after, before we tell the YouTube people to go watch the video?
I was in a very like uh I mean I still am, but I'm in a very like transformative period of my dance right now where I'm learning new things. I'm trying to figure out how to put my personality into the dance, like how to really play with things instead of just being like technically precise, I guess. And I'm really, really
Mm.
happy with how that dance went. It was so fun. And of course, Brendan Strong I love social dancing with him all the time. So he's a good leader and I love dancing with him. So
I will throw the link in the YouTube cards above, so everybody go watch the dance and then come back and we will get to analyzing. To the screen share. Doodly doodly doodly. So, is there any kind of like game plan or headspace you try to get into at the beginning of a spotlight? I can enunciate words.
the biggest thing that I do all the time is I like take a deep breath because I'm very like it might not look the way, but I get very anxious before a spotlight. Um, and so like obviously deep breaths and like just like kind of resetting my nervous system in the moment always brings me back to the moment and brings me back to like my partner and like so the other thing I do is I focus more on the music first, just because again, that's another thing that can like calm me down and get me out of the like anxiety
Mhm.
headspace.
Right.
Always nice hearing that
Yeah.
like everybody experiences anxiety.
Oh yeah.
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 Is there anything different you think about in like a heated environment instead of a spotlight?
Um, Not too much. Most of the time in a heated environment, I do definitely feel like I can let loose a little bit more because like not all eyes are on me. Um, but
Yeah.
It's more again the same thing where it's like I have to make sure I'm taking deep breaths. I'm actually kind of sitting in moments rather than like rushing through everything. Yeah.
Hmm. Hey, you've been doing some champion stuff recently though, right?
Yeah, so I've been doing some champion Strictly's. I haven't competed in a champion Jack and Jill yet, but hopefully knocking that soon. So I qualified back in October, and then now I'm 12 points away from getting kicked out. Um,
Hmm.
and I feel like, again, I'm kind of in this like transition phase, um, where I'm still trying to figure out how to put my own personality into my dance and how to like work on more of my own movement that I really want to have people perceive me as, I guess, if that makes sense. So it's going to be a really interesting transition for me to see how I change from, the all-star scene to like the champion scene. So we'll see.
Hmm.
Do you feel like you change anything about your dancing when you are dancing with All Stars versus Champs?
Um, I mean, it's definitely the fact of like when I'm with All Stars, I kind of make sure to bring out my own personality more and kind of show like who I am.
Hmm.
And when I'm with champions, I'm kind of listening for like subtle details that I might be missing. Just because like I am so interested in the expertise of everyone's dance that I really make it a point to like hone in for champions. And I do all stars too. Like it's not too much of a difference, but like that is more on the forefront of my mind as I switch.
Is there anything in particular that you liked about this dance?
Yeah, feel free to point out anything juicy technique-wise that you're like, ooh, let's dive into that. Just point it
Yeah,
out, please.
for sure. Um, this dance, I mean, specifically, I like how we both knew we had to kind of build to something. And so at the start, we were very like
Mhm.
calm and kind of listening to each other and very in tune. And then as we get to like starting to the phrase change, we both know that like there's an objective and that we both like want to work together to kind of hit it. And so I really like how we both kind
Mhm.
of tune into each other, but also know how to like hit that phrase change. And we really build together really well. So it was one of this build is actually kind of one of my favorites that I've seen in my dance. So
Really? Love that. Yeah, no, this is a great dance just overall. I think you guys complement each other really well.
Hmm.
I mean, both of us, like, even in these last couple of moments that we're seeing right now, where we're both kind of like spinning around each other, like you can see moments of like our frames kind of responding and like calling out things. Um, whereas like in this moment, I
Mhm.
spin around, he moves down track, and then I kind of back up to kind of reestablish that connection so that we can go further down the floor. And it's like that sort of like mini column response that we
Yeah.
had in that moment was beautiful and it felt really good too. So it's subtleties like that that really keep me in tune to what I do.
Do you have any like specific shapes or anything you like to create with this, or you just kind of go with whatever you're feeling like in the moment?
Oh, with my dips specifically, uh I actually make sure to highlight more of my upper body in a dip
Mm.
just because for me myself going into my knees isn't quite applicable. I have really bad knees and really
Mm.
bad hips. And so like
Twinsies.
yeah, I'm like
We feel you on that.
so I make sure to try to highlight my upper body, especially emphasizing with like my hair.
Mm.
Because I know I can't go into like those lower dips sometimes without like the correct amount of support or like correct amount of
Mm.
like distance from start of dip to
Mhm.
like end of dip. Um, and so like at least in this one specifically, I knew that we were going to be hitting kind of this like front scene. And so I
Hmm.
really made an emphasis to like whip hair around and back.
Yeah. You have some really great hairography. I mean,
Yes.
So I actually took a
yeah.
pole dancing class to learn about my hairography.
Nice.
I because I see a lot of pole dancers
Oh, that's
and their
fun.
I see a lot of pole dancers and their like hair and their hairography, especially regarding like a pole where you can get it caught like all the time. I was like, I wonder how they do that. And then I
Yeah.
was like, well, why don't I just go take a class and maybe ask?
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
it was very fun.
That is so cool.
That's
I never
great.
thought of connecting those two before, but that's awesome.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I think there was like a while ago that somebody asked a question about like, well, how do you work with your hair specifically when you have longer hair? And it's a very like specific thing that, unless you have long hair, it's really hard to like figure that out. It's like a different the way that you have to move neck wise and
Yeah, because
make
part of
sharp
it's an
movements.
illusion. Like you're not actually giving yourself whiplash.
Yeah. I remember, oh, I forgot how long ago this was, but someone specifically made a comment on like Facebook about my hair and like, how do you deal with longer hair that's curly and maybe has like a heavier weight to it in dance?
Hmm.
And actually, fortunately, my hair, even though it looks very big, I have like my hair is a lot of it, but it's very like fine.
Same.
And so fortunately, yeah, fortunately I can like whip it around without having a lot of weight added to my head and like having
Yeah.
not strain my neck. But it is an
Yeah.
interesting question to look at like how different people kind of use their head weight and what's attached to it to like dance.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
Yeah. It's especially important for, follows that are wanting to dance with their hair down a lot. I mean, especially it can get in your face and,
yeah.
you gotta be able to fix it.
Yep.
One of the journeys that like I think all West Coast swing dancers are on indefinitely is finding their anchor, right? Uh, do you have any stories to tell or interesting technique snippets to share with us about your journey with your anchor and your technique?
Oh, absolutely. So it's very funny we were talking about my anchor because that is actually something I worked on with Ben Morris for like, gosh, we were at it for like 3 years straight. Essentially,
Mm.
when he first picked out, we were in a lesson. He first picked out that my five was flat, and it was just my five. It was not anything else. It was just my five. And so I definitely had to work on rolling through my five pretty particularly for most of, I think it was like in between advanced. Um,
Mm.
so it's so funny that like one thing in an anchor, right, can change so much about a dance. Because essentially my five, because it was flat, I was then reaching the end of my slot too soon. And then my leaders
Mm.
felt like they were kind of being like yanked into the end of slot. Um, and it was very funny that we worked on this thing, like particularly for so many years to try to get it.
Hmm.
Um,
Interesting. Can you explain a little bit more what you mean by your five was flat?
yeah. So especially when we're trying to, I guess, roll through our feet to make sure that we're continuing constant connection and making sure that like our connection is always at I guess the same level as before. So rather than going from like a 4 to a 7, then we're going from like a 5 to a 6 and it feels very seamless.
Mm.
And that's
Mm.
essentially what was happening in my dance is that because my 5 was flat, it felt to the leaders like my connection was going from like a 4 to an 8 or somewhere on the scale if you have a scale. And so making sure that I roll through my foot to keep that connection pretty constant as we reach the end of the slot to, build tension for the next one.
And I know you also lead as well, and you lead awesomely. I love watching you do switch leads and three for alls and stuff like that.
Ah, yeah.
Um, how has like when in your journey did you start also learning how to lead, and how did that timing and then doing both? uh help or hinder yourself? Like what happened with that shenanigans? Because I started both at the same time.
Mm.
So I always am interested in hearing people's stories.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to say I started leading in I remember the first comp I did it. It was actually at Jack and Jillarama, where I entered the newcomer division, that they had on, I think it was like Thursday. Um, and I entered that division. I don't remember where I placed as far of a lead. But uh I think I was in advanced follow by that point. So kind of a little flip-floppy on terms of like where my lead was and where my follow was. But
Mhm.
essentially my parents encouraged me to do it just because it is so important to also know what the other side is asking for and what the other side wants and what they're focusing on. And like it's a different skill and technique entirely. Um, and you focus on different things. And I, at the time, didn't really like leading just because, like, following is definitely my game, where, like, figuring out what the leader wants is definitely more of my game rather than being the one to figure it out. And, but more recently, as I've kind of had more of a solid follow that I can, like, just kind of bounce back into really easily, figuring out my lead now has been a wonderful journey of, like, personality and, like, how to do weight transfers, how to look for connection from that side and that perspective. It has been a really fun
Mhm.
journey. So,
Do you feel like it's changed anything about your following?
oh, definitely. One thing it's changed about my following is just to be more clear about like when I'm going to hit a specific moment and like when I want to maybe ask for collaboration on like certain things, like because I understand from the leader side now
Hmm.
that that can be super vague when it comes down to it sometimes.
Hmm.
So making sure my
Yeah.
intentions are clear in between different distinctions.
Hmm. That's great. Is there any specific ways that you like to communicate that you want to do something?
There's a couple different ways that I generally when I'm going to communicate for hitting for a moment, most of the time I like almost pause and pull back in my connection before I like go for it. Um, and most of the time you'll feel my connection on the follower side like lighten up. On the leader side, I try to give more like resistance towards a direction. So like
Mm-hmm.
definitely kind of leaning away from each other and leveraging that really well. But it's definitely different with every partner. Like sometimes, we're working at a very intense level and sometimes we're just like chilling out. So,
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because I see you making quite a bit of eye contact with Branden during this particular dance when you're kind of wanting to play around a little bit.
absolutely. I think eye contact is not something I definitely, I guess, search for, but is something that
Hmm.
definitely helps within my dance that I choose pick and choose when to have it. So,
Was
Hmm.
that something that
Yeah.
was hard for you to start doing because you came from an introverted background?
oh, absolutely. I have literally devised ways of trying to still keep my partner within, my peripheral, but not make eye contact with them, just because like that can be
Yeah.
such a vulnerable space for each person of like direct eye
Yeah.
contact. But I've over time, as I've learned more about I guess like my peers and partners and like how partnering works, it's become a lot easier. But at the start, I was like, no eye contact whatsoever. This moment right here where he preps me with his like first of all really cool prep, but he has I want to say he has his wristband on his left arm, and it starts to get caught in my hair.
Hmm.
Oh
um
no.
and so he like lifts up as I'm rotating to like make sure it doesn't get caught in my hair. And I forget like I that loss of connection right there. I'm like very intentionally having to crouch and like balance. and then we like reconnect and somehow make it work. I don't know how that works. I'm gonna be totally honest. Um,
Great
but
balance.
oh,
Mhm.
it was wonderful. Like once I realized that we kind of got out of it, and he literally fully reconnects with like both hands to make sure he gives me the leverage that I need to like rebalance. I was like, oh, and
Yeah.
we're out. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's really great partnering by both of you, really. But especially him kind of really adjusting to where you're at because you did go into it in a little bit of a unique shape, and it's really hard to figure out balance wise, where you're at when you're in a different shape than just kind of being more upright or just, like soft knees, that type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, not only different shape, but like also spinning at the same time.
Hmm.
And so like where he reaches in, he I think he intentionally goes for like the shoulder to try to make sure he has like more surface area to try to like grab onto and help
Yeah.
reconnect. It just so happens that we end up like kind of sliding to both the hands. Um, and I actually, now looking at this more, I realize that once I get the connection, I lay back into it to regain my balance again.
Yeah.
Um, Again, that's another one of my like balancing techniques where like I can't necessarily go to the floor because my knees aren't too great. So focusing on upper body leverage and making sure that I get that connection back is
Yeah.
definitely one of the things that I like lean more into.
Yeah, no, I've definitely like watching you. You have really great instincts on finding your balance in moments like this.
Very tricky.
I just love how like he's always an attentive lead, but in this moment he realizes that like I need to be there for you. And he pays so much attention and he's placing his feet in such a way that he can like move in any direction at any point to like counter you in the way you need.
Mhm.
And
It,
he's in a really weird like frame position on his own.
yeah.
Like, if we took you out of the picture, he'd be like, "Meh."
Yeah. I mean, it's really cool how he also, because he's focusing on like I guess me and trying to reconnect there, you can see him like almost like pitter patter stepping around me as we rotate around each other, to make sure that he's like as close as possible to like reconnect when needed. Um, and it actually works out really well for the exit of this move where we kind of I set a linear tone, but he definitely keeps more to that rotation that we just had. And it calls for this really cool moment of like in and out kind
Yeah.
of snap.
This is one of the indicators of like how high level both of you are, is that there's this moment of like, oh, are we okay? And then you're okay, but you don't just anchor. You continue flowing into something more complex
Yeah.
from that moment instead of just anchoring right here.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Very short recovery time. Yeah.
It is really cool to see how with different leaders how that recovery time in moments because we're always going to get into moments where it's very unknown territory. Um, and it's really cool to
Hmm.
see how different leaders kind of like manage that space of like unknown territory. Um, and then in turn, how I respond to that. So it's a very dynamic conversation that takes a turn
Hmm.
every time.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to mention this part kind of coming up here where you uh kind of slow things down and you look at the audience right here. Is there any like particular moments that you always go for when you're doing a spotlight to kind of connect with the audience, or is it just kind of a go by the feel thing?
Yeah, it's more a go by the feel for me. Because my first priority is always connecting with partner, right? And so if so happens that we end up presenting to the audience and I have a moment to kind of like look out, I'll definitely take it.
Hmm.
But it's really cool how it just like sort of pops up, and it's not like I guess an achievement that I have to try to go get.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that about your dancing is that you really do seem to always be locked in with your lead and really wanting to pay attention to what's going on in the partnership, even like in spotlight situations, there's a lot of times that follows will uh feel a little caught up in the moment and have a hard time being right there with their partners and locking in on what's going on with that. So really appreciate
Yeah.
that about your dancing.
Thank you. I also really appreciate that moment where we're both looking out to the audience because we have this like head movement where we're looking away from me, or not away, but like looking in opposite directions, and then we switch and it looks in opposite directions again. And it's just like just
Hmm.
minor details like that to someone's dancing where it's like head movement.
Yeah.
We're both
Yeah.
just transferring from one foot to another, but like because we're focusing intentionally on like upper body styling, it just makes it that much more juicy.
Yeah. It makes it much more dynamic to add that in.
Hmm.
And then I wanted to talk about that little ride kind of that happens right at the end. Do you gauge going into things like that in any specific way, or do you um, kind of feel comfortable committing based on partner? Just curious about
Yeah,
your thought process on that.
it's definitely a balance between like the trust I do have with a partner and like how secure I feel in my own self in that moment. This is
Hmm.
actually a very funny ride because I trust Brandon completely with my weight, and didn't realize that we were like kind of going off axis until like last moment where we kind of caught each other. Um, but definitely
Yeah.
again like balancing from upper body things and
Yeah.
learning how to seek those like mini connection points of like, oh, we've gone too far one way, we've gone too far the other way. Like, how do we overcorrect, counterbalance, whatever?
Committing weight into a ride can be like a scary thing to learn when you're first learning rides. So, was there any like tip or piece of technique that helped you from the follows perspective learn how to give weight to the leader in a ride because it's really necessary for the counterbalancing forces?
Yeah. I specifically think about it more like this is kind of a little, I guess, old school technique, but like really pushing the stake of the ball of your foot into the ground towards like a 45-degree angle downwards to kind of push your weight up into that upper connection, whether it be in closed position or here where he has both of his hands over my shoulders. I really think about it like that. Rather than like trying to
Yeah.
overcommit like upper body weight or overcommit lower body weight. Like I'm more pushing up into the connection for rides. It feels a lot more like I have things to do with my lower body and I can actually like make these lines with my other legs and all of this stuff. So I definitely think about it more like from a feet perspective than like upper body connection or like
Yeah.
main core.
That's interesting. That's a different way to look at it than a lot of people do.
Hmm. It's just so interesting, like which body parts as an individual we like think of to like find the solution, you know?
Mm.
Because like that's what works for you. Other people might think upper body, yada yada yada. And that's why it's so
Mhm.
important to like as a teacher to like try to say things in different ways until the student understands it.
I mean, as a teacher and coach myself, like I definitely try to teach people about their own bodies and how it may work. I have several students who have hypermobility in like their shoulders and elbows and knees, and we have to like figure out different solutions of like, what are you feeling? How do you feel stretch? Like in different ways. It's really important to teach someone about their own body within like a dance that has a lot of free form to it. Um, to make sure that everyone, you know, knows, I guess, if the feeling is correct, quote unquote.
Hmm.
Mhm. Yeah, that's something that we tend to talk about a lot is that like correct technique and using things the correct way are going to look differently on everyone just because we all are slightly different. Nobody has quite the exact same, build, makeup, all of that stuff. So it's going to look different. And it's also kind of a tangent that at least I tend to go off on is that, we try to recreate shapes of the people that, when we're initially learning that we're learning from and that we're seeing dance, we're trying to recreate those shapes instead of figuring out how to do it properly in our body. And that creates a lot more problems than it than it creates
Hmm.
solutions.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like a couple reasons why I picked like the idols that I kind of tend to look after or have some semblance of is just because our body and build make are not the same obviously but similar. Um
Yeah. It's always a good thing to find in a
Yeah.
coach, mentor, whatever you want to call it. Somebody to at least even just watch, analyze, take styling things from,
for
to find
sure.
somebody similar. Who do
Uh,
you in particular like?
So my biggest idol is Tori Zowie. I take from her all the time. She has amazing, impeccable like lower body styling, with some like upper body sprinkles. And definitely like in the recent, I guess, months, I've strayed away into figuring out what more of my body is coming to bring. But like that was
Mhm.
definitely a huge inspiration for like, God, 7, 8 years. And
Yeah.
I still take private lessons from time to time just because I love her styling. So,
is there any follow whose like body mechanics and build doesn't really match yours, but you really love? And if you were in a different body, that's who you would want to emulate?
mm-hmm. So man, so many to choose from, but one that definitely comes to mind is Victoria Hank.
Mhm.
Definitely, we have similar body builds. I feel like she has maybe shorter legs than me and maybe a bit longer torso and can create like a lot more shapes from that.
Yeah.
But definitely like the way she frames going into certain moves and like kind of just like changes the game for a lot of just like basic movement. If I had another like body archetype, I would definitely head fully that way. So,
Yeah, no. Victoria is super creative. It's really fun to watch what she comes up with.
hmm Was watching some local like competition footage, not at a big full event the other day. And there's this element that I see when dancers are trying to get to that point where they can not do swing vocab, but still have flow and rhythm to it. And they were struggling with that. But it's one of the things that I love about your dancing in general and this particular spotlight is that you both are so relaxed in the beginning and you're dancing. There's flow to it, but there's also pretty quickly like a rhythm structure to it, even if it's not like West Coast swing vocab. And I'm wondering if that's something that you ever had to consciously think about, and what you learned to help you make that transition.
hmm. I mean, making sure that I always dance through my movement has been one of my biggest like focuses in my own dance. Um, just because like I it's very yummy in a way to feel the transition from one moment to another and to see how to flow through that space. Um,
Yeah.
like I teach all the time in my classes, like we have checkpoints, right? So we know where the start of a sugar push is going to, start. We know the middle of a sugar push and we know the end. But how do we get to those 3 points is up to everybody to figure out and move in their own body. And like it'll definitely look like a sugar push because you have those checkpoints. But like, what are we doing in between to kind of make it someone's own style or match the music or anything like that?
Mhm.
And then obviously making sure we have like swing rhythm and like making sure that everyone kind of stays on the same beat because it's not just me and Branden in this case, like it's audience, it's judges, it's like making sure that we're all kind of like um focusing on where the beat is and where the music kind of lies in each other's minds. That's
Mhm.
also a thing that I love to just like bring out all the time.
Is there anything like a particular way you had something described to you later in your dance journey that you're like, oh man, I wish someone had said it to me that exact way, like 5 years ago or something? Is there anything in particular that sticks out for you?
Hmm. Oh, okay. I remember I was like, do I have anything? But I do, of course. Um, uh, so I I think it was like maybe a year or two ago, I was working on how to reframe my connection because I actually had a shoulder injury. And making sure that making sure I'm doing connection correctly so I don't injure myself again. But I think I had Nicole Ramirez talk to me about like when she's going in for acceleration or like deceleration or anything like that, she expands out like a porcupine. And I was like, you know what? That makes entirely like because
That's
I was
amazing.
thinking like for faster speed, like I want to shrink myself and kind of like contain almost like a figure skater-esque. Like I was thinking
Hmm.
that. And she's like, no, like you want to expand like a porcupine. And I'm like, oh my God.
That is the best analogy. I love that so much.
I'm like, if someone said expand like a porcupine when I was learning acceleration, I think I would have immediately got it.
Yeah. Because I know you said you the teach and you coach. Is there anything like in particular that you look to impart wisdom wise on students in general or at the beginning of their dance journeys or anything like that?
I really think it was what we are saying before, where you have to kind of teach people to learn about their own bodies.
Mm.
Um, and teaching people that like everyone's built differently. We have similar archetypes where it's like long legs or long arms or long torso, short torso, right? But making sure that you're still learning about your own body and its limitations and like what you can actually push into and what you can't push into. And like that's makes us us. And I definitely try whenever I'm starting either coaching someone new or I'm starting a new lesson with you know, a group of students. Like I hope to impart just a little bit of like curiosity in their brains to like, oh, how does my body work, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. I
Hmm.
think that's really important. I mean, again, like I was saying, that's just, it's such a better way to quickly improve and really be able to connect with partners and whatnot is just to figure out what works for you.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Is there anything we didn't go into greater detail in this dance that you would like to go back and do?
Um, ooh,
Anything you
well,
want me to draw?
love
We
that.
love the drawings.
I specifically want to go back to like right as we set up for the one-footed spin.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Just because that's such an interesting moment for me. Yeah. So, like I was saying before, we're coming out of this like rotational system where we're having to find each other again. Um, and then I create some like linear momentum. He moves down slot. Uh, and sorry, I'm just gonna watch this. It's fun.
You're good.
But I did know that there was like a phrase change coming. I didn't actually know how far away it was, so I kind of set myself up early and had like many one-footed spins to complete, which, you know, dug my own grave there. But it's so funny how in tune to my lower body he was in this moment. Like you can see, oh, we're traveling now. You can kind of see that realization. And then like as I set up for the one-footed spin very intentionally, you can see him go, oop, okay, I have to stop. I have to rebalance myself to like support her in this. Um,
Hmm.
and it's a really cool, again, like those mini back and forths that me and Brandon have specifically in our connection. Um, and again, I set myself up for way too way too many one-footed spins. Um, but it's interesting in I guess the outcome of this one-footed spin, just because like I understand that like now that I have taken over, or not taken over, but like I said, hey, I want to have a moment to like express something. I know my full responsibility is to kind of set us up for the next thing, right? And that's one thing I
Mhm.
definitely work on my partnering a lot is that like if I am choosing to take something over, I want to give it back to the leader in a format that they can understand and that we don't have to both go like, oh shit, what's happening? Um, like
Yep.
it's almost giving them back to on a platter with like a nicely served dinner rather than just like, here are the ingredients, make dinner, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
I talk about that so much as a follow is that like if you're gonna do something, make sure you give your lead like an exit strategy, an exit route, a
Hmm.
way to
Oh,
smoothly get
absolutely.
out of things. Because I feel like there's a lot of times that I see follows that are like, I'm gonna do this thing. Um, you can figure out how we get out of this, right?
Yes.
It's like
Yeah.
maybe it might be a little smoother if we all work together. You help out, you give them the the thought process, you just give them a little idea of how to get out of it.
Yeah. And it's so funny to kind of see the panic in my face of like, oh shit, I dug my own grave. Like I have to get myself out of here. I have to like serve it back to the leader in a way that we can both reconnect. Like it's very funny to see those moments in my own dancing of like, oh no.
But what's funny is like that moment in the song, like almost like your face kind of matches the vibe of that moment anyways. So I feel like it works. It's great. Because I'm like, that face could be intentional. I could read it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually never thought of it about that way. Of course, like in the moment, I'm just like, oh, panic. But I could definitely see how the uh musical chaos, as you say, could match the face for sure.
Actually, just want to point out just the very beginning of this one, but I really like the entry to it. It's a little bit unique because it's not just a normal setup. It's coming out of a turn already.
Hmm.
But it's really hard to find your balance, especially when you're kind of already coming out of a rotation that way.
Mhm.
Is there anything you think about in particular to kind of get your balance in that situation?
So I actually learned partially of this technique from a Tatiana and Jordan Rutensive.
Hmm.
Because they have a lot of moments like that in their routines, in their older routines, where it's coming from a rotation or it's coming from another shape and dynamic, and then it goes straight into a one-footed spin.
Yeah.
And kind of like the porcupine technique that I was talking about earlier, it's really important to kind of expand and slow down,
Mhm.
to emphasize a point of like, oh, this is going to be a different thing that is in the similar vein of what, like, where we're going. And so I
Hmm.
very particularly in this entry of this one-footed spin, I almost like, again, porcupine and like splay my legs out so that like, hey, this is happening.
Hmm.
Yeah.
There's also like you do you're taking this traveling energy and you do this little kind of like hop, if you can call it that, to like make that energy go down into the ground.
Yeah.
So you can plant for your turn.
Yeah, it's very intentionally turning traveling energy into like stationary and like I am turning here now.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing like a leader can feel that in the hand. So like Brandon felt that. It's like, oh, this is where I'm planting. And it made his
And
Yeah.
job so much easier to support you in that turn afterwards.
yeah, and visually, like the hop isn't just like technically, I guess, correct for a one-footed spin to plant yourself, but it's also like visually a leader can see like, oh, there is something
Hmm.
emphasized, so I should fo pay attention to that, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I also like how out of that one-footed spin, he immediately goes for like counterbalance, right? As I start traveling
Hmm.
opposite from him. Um, I think that's one of the coolest things about our connection as well is like I guess moments where we've been picking out, it's always been like in support of each other, where we try to
Hmm.
find counterbalance rather than like any other, I guess, form of going out where whether it be like together in one side or other things like that.
Yeah, he really does a great job of countering you this whole
Hmm.
dance.
Mhm.
Like that's one of the things that really differentiates like the best leaders from those who are still learning is knowing when to counter with movement of the connection point versus
Hmm.
stationary uh, counterbalance. and then versus just moving it with less counterbalance. Like distinguishing which one to do at any
Mhm.
given time. Like if a leader has that down, they're so much fun to dance with. And it feels so
Yeah.
Yeah.
safe and easy. And it's just not work and you can dance instead of
Yeah.
trying to like take care of yourself or help.
Hmm.
Mhm.
It's such a hard
Um,
thing to get to, of just like, I
yeah.
mean, at least through my leading experience, like learning how to counterbalance when and where, and then also like how much to give counterbalance, whether it's more upper body, lower body, how to communicate that. Like it
Hmm.
is, oof, I pray.
That's actually what I was going to point out is that when he counters you coming out of that, because you're kind of more up, he counters you staying up with his frame as well, instead of kind of dropping it.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, we both set into this very like linear counterbalance, which is it's very nice to feel after a one-footed spin. Um,
Yeah.
but yes, absolutely. Like where in your own body to counterbalance versus where in your partner they're counterbalancing. Um, man.
Hmm. Yeah, especially because this is quite an unusual position for him to counter because his shoulder is up and it can very easily disconnect.
Yeah, I'm just like trying to feel that in my body
Hmm.
and like the attention
Yeah,
to
it's like
detail
a
he
really
has. So
strange,
great.
it could very easily disconnect.
Yeah, you can almost see the resistance like in his elbow like countering towards me of just like now we're kind of going away from each other and now we're going to very intentionally set this connection for maybe another prep or maybe just something linear, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely one of the moments that you want to try and use the elbow to kind of pull away. I don't like talking about pulling with an elbow just because it tends to create tension in a way that it shouldn't. But in this case, that's definitely the proper way for him to counter that is by directing with the elbow.
Yeah, I think it's also important the fact that he still has his shoulder engaged, right? So if his shoulder
Mhm.
was already like across his own body, then maybe countering back with the elbow would feel a lot more strained, but he already has his shoulder very much in tune to like countering, so it makes it the process so much easier.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I don't think you compete and social dance in both flats and heels. Do you have a preference? Do you alternate between the two and kind of keep it even?
Um, so I definitely am more partial to heels. And I think that's just like because the era I was growing up was very sandal like heavy.
Yeah, it was a
Um,
slow dance or nothing else.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I literally remember when like Jen DeLuca came out with suede Converse and everybody was like, "Oh my God, like this is revolutionary."
Yep.
Um, uh, I want to say I mean, I like sandals because it definitely helps with my leg lines and like making sure that I'm really flexing through my toes and pointing through my toes to make like good leg lines. Um,
Hmm.
Also because like I'm much more of a toe release person than I am like heel release, so it just makes it that much easier in the sandals. But I definitely will switch to a flat sneaker every once in a while when I want to feel a lot more grounded in my dance, maybe more of that like hip hop double bent knee archetype.
Yeah.
And I will very intentionally sometimes like change the texture of my dance depending on the shoe I am wearing. Just because
Yeah.
it feels much more mechanically, I guess, cohesive when I do that. So,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it definitely feels different.
It was funny. We were working with a student the other day, and I said that having something with like a cushion sole, like a sneaker, it's like having a micro Bosu ball effect the entire time.
uh-huh.
And so your ankles and your calves are going to be working harder. And he was just like, that explains so much because he didn't understand why he was getting so tired so fast in suede
Yeah.
sneakers. And I'm like, well, there you go.
Yeah, you're literally having to keep balance on a thing that has so much foam flexibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shock absorption.
which is nice for the knees,
Yeah.
but not so much for the other muscles around.
Yep.
Mine are like just full on, I think, running sneakers. So there's like a lot of cushion. And when I'm trying to like ground myself, I'm
Yeah.
like, where's the floor? Come get me.
Where did it
Yeah.
go?
I do specifically choose sandals that have a very kind of thin, at least on the ball, a very thin like padding,
Hmm.
just because I really like to feel how to, I guess, flex between my main toe and my pinky toe and like how to feel that connection with the floor. But it can hurt sometimes, that's for sure.
Yep.
If you're dancing on it for a long time, your feet tend to not love that quite as much.
Or like
But
even some floors that don't flex, right? So we
yeah,
sometimes have those hardwood floors that like do not flex underneath. And even after a couple of dances, I'm like, oh, I can feel the difference. Got it.
yeah.
Hmm.
That
But I
little
do
cute
agree.
moment.
It's so cute.
So it's very funny because like I love to point out things in the music that maybe people don't quite hear as often. And it's really cool to see this moment where both Brad and Ben in the background, they're like, "Oh yeah, it is there and I'll hit it with you." And like seeing like people in the audience interact with that sort of like I am pointing this out so everybody knows that it's here. And them kind of catching on to that. It was
That's funny. I hadn't noticed them in the background before. That they definitely do.
I love watching other competitors in the spotlight, just sitting in their chairs in the background. It's so much fun.
it is very fun to see like friends go up and, spouses go up and seeing that like undeniable support in some people for
Yeah.
friendships and all that.
Hmm.
Like that is definitely a great thing to see in a spotlight
Hmm.
sometimes, especially being in the room, seeing that. It's like, oh, that feels super nice and like community
Yeah.
driven
Yep.
moments like that where even the competitors are kind of getting like into the dance, it really
Yeah.
shows how much performance someone can have and how much
Hmm.
like pull someone can have in their
Yeah.
dance.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I
It's
can't wait to have my backup dancer moment, either being as the backup dancer or
either way. But yeah, some people, it's one of those things that you hear, like invite the audience in, but that's a vibe. Like that doesn't explain how you accomplish that.
Yeah.
Uh, is there any particular thing that you think about or that you've learned that has helped you with that part of your performance?
honestly still figuring it out. Um, like we always see the constant like walk out to the audience kind of invite to the audience, which like definitely gets people riled up, but I'm trying to look for more of that like when you cheer I cheer sort of moment, or like something that doesn't quite address the audience but definitely brings them to the dance. And
Mhm.
I'm still figuring it out, so when y'all figure it out, let me know. I'll do the same.
Will do.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give my wrist a break from holding that monitor.
Yeah. Are you holding like the arrow key down as you like frame?
Yeah, yeah. So I
Oh,
got this mammoth in one hand and then like me.
yep.
And then depending on how the video downloads, like this one seems to be on twos. So when I'm slow mowing through it, I have to hit the arrow key twice to get the frame to move once.
Oh boy.
Like, when I'm old, I'm gonna have the weirdest repetitive stress injury.
Yep.
Is there anything nerdy on your mind in your technique or the world's technique right now that's just been like sitting there like an elephant in the room?
String. Um, um, man. So, actually at Jack and Jillorama, we had a 30-minute like review critique session from Benji.
Oh, cool.
And he was talking about like when you're looking to like reinvent your dance, or not reinvent, but like looking to change up your dance or looking to kind of add something new, is to look back at something that you have consistently been doing in your dances and looking to see how to change that, whether it be like level change, shape change, connection, any of these tiny aspects. And so now I'm starting to like finally delve into that and kind of go back into my own dancing in the past few months and see like what do I do consistently that maybe we can switch to something else.
Hmm.
So that's
Hmm.
something that I'm, on a new adventure for, and I'm very excited,
Awesome. That's a cool framework.
Interesting. Have you
right?
found anything in particular?
Not necessarily. I think I'm going to focus more on my leg work though, because I definitely do a lot of like repetitive sweeps or like leg flicks that I think could be uh not necessarily change, but like more dynamic in a way. So we'll see where I get with that.
Mhm.
Cool. Where can people find you on the internet to learn from you?
Absolutely. So, I have my Facebook page, and anybody can message me on there for any interests, whether it be workshop weekend, class privates, anything like that. Um, I operate mostly on my Instagram page now, though. I'm pretty sure I have a link tree to all of my other pages, whether it be my YouTube, my TikTok, all of that stuff. But again, anybody can message me on my Facebook and Instagram stories. I post my Calendly links for privates at dance events and when I'm in town for different things. So definitely find me there.
Sweet. And you do video critiques as well. Is that something you can do long
Video,
distance?
yes, video
Sweet.
critiques and Zoom privates as well. So if we're not in the same state, that does not matter. So
Sweet. I love teachers who know that it is possible to teach. Like, sure, there are some aspects that you can't do over the internet, but you can do a lot.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This is really fun.
Oh, this was so amazing. I'm so glad that we got to do this.
Yay!
Yeah. Took a while, but you know what? We got it. We got it done
Yeah.
finally.
Got it
In the year that is 2020.
in.
Where are you going to be in the like next month or so? Um,
Yeah, so I have a bunch of travel plans for the next month. Just came from LA to now I'm in Colorado for like a week. And then I'm going to Liberty Swing out in New Jersey. After Liberty Swing, I will be in that area for a couple of days, just checking out the local scene. Then I head over to Wawa Westy um, to go be on staff.
Yay.
And
Ah,
then after that, I think I have like a week break in between, and then I head to Midwest Festy Fest to also be on staff. Um, I
okay.
am
So
so entirely excited for all my travels. So,
Yay!
mhm.
great. That's great. I think we can
Yeah,
wrap up. I don't think
I
there's
can
anything else
stop.
we need to go over.
I can
So
press the button. Where's the they moved the button.